We have Michael Gormley on the phone here with us from Newsday. Hello, Michael.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good.
Good. You had, you got quite a few pages in your story, huh?
Well, it was a busy week, yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet. So I'll let you sum it up since you're in the midst of it. So what happened?
Well, specifically for the New York State Senate, which is, the Senate and the Assembly that make up the legislature, the Senate has been Republican-controlled for most of the last 50 years. On Tuesday, the Democrats had a huge wave, really, that came through that gave them a majority for the first time in a long time. And now they're going to be able to put through an awful lot of their progressive measures. The one caveat on that is that the Senate Democrats won the majority on the strength of Long Island wins and other suburban wins around the state. So that's kind of a moderating factor. So you're going to see some progressive measures as well as some that would go to what politicians usually call, bread and butter kind of issues, the tuition assistance, that type of thing, property taxes. So it should be a different kind of year, or 2 years the next 2 years in Albany for the state senate.
Right. Well, I think that the best thing, just as at a quick glance, is the fact, or the idea that the government's set up to be checks and balances, and this kind of puts that more back into play than it's been.
Well, the Republicans were arguing that they were the check and balance, or the check on an all-Democratic government. Now we have an all-Democratic government. Again, the difference is, in 2008, the Democrats won the Senate majority and then promptly lost it in 2 years. It was a very chaotic couple of years. There was a coup and all kinds of power struggles that went on.
Right.
But the difference back then was that was a very New York City-centric Senate Democratic majority. This one is Long Islanders are going to be playing a big role in this Senate Democratic majority. Todd Kaminsky, for one, who's now the senior member of the Long Island Coalition. So there's going to be a check that way, in that the Democratic leaders in the Senate say you're not going to see a lot of huge spending or huge taxation as in 2009.
Right. Well, and now what I've been hearing from a few quarters is that idea that the Democrats are going to spend most of their time investigating the Republicans, or the White House in particular. Do you think they're going to get because the worry is that they'll spend all their time doing that, and then they won't have a viable candidate to go up against the Republicans for the presidential election?
Well, it's a very interesting point. New York State now is poised to really be a factor in the investigations of President Trump. The Attorney General, Letitia James, the Attorney General-elect, she won on Tuesday, basically on the strength of saying that she would investigate Donald Trump and his businesses in New York. New York's in a unique situation for that because we have state laws, and the Trump organization is located in New York.
Right.
So there will be more investigations, some of which probably could have been halted or slowed down if Republicans were still in charge of the Senate.
Right.
But now with all Democrats running the Assembly, the Senate, and the Governor's office, as well as the Attorney General's office and the Comptroller's office, there probably will be a lot more investigations than would have been otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, I have a million questions, but I think one of Bob Mueller's things was that when he went after Manafort, he filed federal charges, but he also filed the money laundering charges and some others, I believe, with the Attorney General of New York State, just in case the feds screwed up their case.
Well, yeah, that's true. There's also kind of a weakness in federal charges. Federal charges generally involve violations of constitutional rights, and that's what they go back to. In fact, the federal charge isn't really for killing someone isn't really a murder charge. It's actually technically written denying someone their civil rights by taking away their life.
Wow!
So all the federal charges might not fit what they're looking for in the Trump administration.
Right.
State charges, on the other hand, we've got a lot of laws here, as you know, a lot of business laws. We have this law that's called the Martin Act, which is even some prosecutors think that it's maybe a little too powerful, but it allows an awful lot of investigation of businesses, and they could become criminal investigations under the Martin Act, which was created back in the Depression era.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you remember Eliot Spitzer, as Attorney General, kind of resurrected that, and he went after Wall Street with that Martin Act. This is the same thing that Letitia James says that she can use against the Trump organization.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I think some of us were very surprised to find out here on Long Island that I know when they brought Venditto to court, we found out as a result of that politicians don't necessarily face any charges or simply for taking money. We now have to tie it to their job and whether or not they favorably, gave somebody something that had something to do with their job and took the money to do that.
You're right, and it does seem weird until you step back and say, "Well, who wrote these laws?"
Who changed it? Exactly. You know what? I tell you, Michael, maybe it's a little off track here, and I go into the tulips often, but I was reading the Constitution. You come to find out that what was supposed to pay for America was the taxes on transactions between corporations.
Right.
And our personal income was never mentioned.
Right.
And in 100 years, the world is upside down. And those corporations paid a little bit of money every year to the right people and got the laws chipped away. And I'm looking at look at the state of things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading that there's no such thing as a class action lawsuit anymore in America. If you want to sue a corporation, you got to do it yourself.
I believe you can still turn a lawsuit into a class action suit, which basically means you end up in a settlement. Someone sues a corporation, and it looks like it's being successful. They get other people to join that lawsuit, and then the company sort of faces the situation of, is it cheaper to just settle this or to continue to fight it?
Right. Okay. But, our protections, consumer protections, what about antitrust laws in the country? Where the heck are they? I used to work for AT&T. Judge Green broke that company up because it was too big.
Right.
And now you've got Time Warner and the next big behemoth, we're gonna put a deal together. Really?
There's an awful lot of concern about that because it's also the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few in the country.
Yeah.
And that was what the Democrats nationally were trying to argue in 2016. It didn't really carry the day, though.
Yeah, right. I don't. I think well, I'm not a college kid, so I'm one of the older guys here, and I see what happened at the beginning of World War II. The Weimar Republic in Germany and Mussolini. I read just for the brush up on a little bit of the latest fascism. I looked to see, and it took Mussolini about 2 to 3 weeks to walk into Italy with only 22% of the population behind him.
Well, there's a lot of people that are making parallels to that to today, and I guess I would leave that to the political scientists to talk about.
Yeah,
there's many parallels, especially if you're a student of history like you are. You look at the enemies, calling the media the enemies of the state. That's also a big thing that happened in that era in the 1930s.
Yeah,
and there's some lessons.
Yeah,
considered there.
I can't think of another president in my time that went around the country having rallies, in essence, campaigning after he's already won.
Yeah,
that's troublesome to me. It really is.
Well, part of it's a sign of the times. The races cost so much now. Campaigning, as you know, is almost a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to cut any slack for politicians who do these rallies because you're right. But President Obama was on the road 2 or 3 times a week during his tenure. He was usually doing state business, announcing something or lobbying for one of his proposals. But in effect, those were Obama supporters that would show up there. I think maybe we've seen more of that, and that might be what you reflected in these rallies. And I've been to a lot of those. I covered for Newsday. I covered the 2016 election around the country, so I was at a lot of those rallies.
Wow. Well, we've got to sit down and have lunch sometime. I got a lot of things to talk to you about. So, I mean, are you hopeful that this will make a big difference somehow in the direction we're traveling, or
which part?
I would say the Democratic break. Getting in there. And
well, I think it'll be interesting, and you have to give everybody a shot. They say that they've learned a lot from. Really, there was major problems in 2009, the last time the Democrats held the Senate. But in fairness, there's not many of those people that are left. In fact, in 2009, a lot of the people the Democrats who created problems were indicted shortly after that for various corruption measures.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. There's a new spirit, and they're excited, and new ideas are always good. We'll see what happens.
Oh yeah. Well, am I correct in most of the new Democrats would be in the House?
Nationally, in the House of Representatives?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's where the Democrats made their gains.
Right.
There really wasn't much of a chance of Democrats to make gains in the Senate. The few seats that were open were very strongly Republican, so there wasn't much chance of a turnover there. In fact, I think the Republicans may have gained a seat or two in the U.S. Senate.
But now, as the way that a bill goes, or let's just say the House of Representatives makes a, I don't know, they write a bill, they want something to happen. Doesn't the Senate get the first say?
Well, Washington operates in kind of an odd way on these bills. The Congress, or the House of Representatives more specifically, can promote these bills first. But they have conference committees where they try to rectify separate bills into one, because the same bill, of course, has to be passed in both houses. With a Republican Senate and a Democratic House, at worst, you're going to look at a lot of gridlock.
Right.
At best, maybe the country would come together a little bit and progress. But again, I think we sort of have to give them a shot to see how they're going to deal with this.
Yeah. I think our hope lies in the few factions on either side that can actually get together and make some progress. Because
and I'm sure you've talked to politicians here who've been around for a long time. They say that their world has changed greatly too. It used to be, I know in Albany it was true. Democrats and Republicans could argue, tooth and nail on the floor, and then that night go out to dinner together or have some beers at night.
Right.
That doesn't happen very much.
Well, no, and I think social media has a lot to do with that, because a snapshot of that meeting can be framed any way you want to frame it when you put the caption.
Well, it's a good point. It's kind of a funny element of it is that there used to be an awful lot more talk, and I'm talking like 20, 30 years ago in Albany, of this Bear Mountain Compact where legislators up here, like I said, decades ago, would have girlfriends, and that the biggest thing that ended that was cell phone cameras.
Yeah, right.
There's a truth to it. I don't know how much, but there's some truth to it.
Right. Yeah. That's and that tendency is only going to get stronger with the artificial intelligence and the we are basically losing our privacy.
Well, I think you've got a very strong concern there. Yeah.
Yeah. No matter how hard you try to stay off the grid, it's almost impossible.
Well, because you just can't get along working off the grid. You can't socially. You become a hermit. It's a very difficult thing to do these days.
Yeah. But it has its implications, and it's scary.
And it can wear you down. I mean, even those in the news business, we understand how it can be. It kind of feel like an onslaught sometimes to people out there. That just seems like there's bad news or contentious news all the time. We're aware of that, but we sort of have to plug through.
I was just thinking today, you know what I want? I want a government that does things for people as opposed to a government that does things to people.
That's actually a good line.
That's pretty simple.
I would always throw this out as I've been covering politics for 30 years. The idea that everyone in government is out for themselves just isn't true. There's some very, very dedicated people.
Yes, I agree.
That are there for all the right reasons and that are trying very hard. There's a